So tonight we've got Vanessa, who's an Australian contact experiencer. And Vanessa's life of high strangeness began with a near-death experience at age 3, which I've just asked her to talk about as well, because I know some of you have an interest in that too. And that was followed by contact experiences beginning in 1984 at age 13. Physically scarred and consciously awake and spiritually expanded, her life took on a quest to quench her thirst for knowledge of the unknown. So starting with the New South Wales library system as a child, then on to explore her abilities to create at Newcastle TAFE Art School in 1986. Here she was introduced to shamanism, and her exploration of consciousness began, which in time led to a BA at Newcastle University in 1995, studying comparative religion and anthropology, sociology, history, and philosophy. Like all of us at different times, family life took over, and her connection to the land was further explored through permaculture and self-sufficiency. So Vanessa moved to Bellingen in New South Wales in 2011 to fulfill her vision of a conscious life on the land. But UFO phenomena started again with lots of three major sightings over her home in 2014 to 2016. And all coinciding at the same time as she was exploring her past experiences via regression. And this is ongoing contact that's been the catalyst for Vanessa to return to the exploration of the UFO phenomenon.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Cheryl, and inviting me to join you to share my story. This is really strange talking to myself on this screen, but I'll deal. Yeah, my story did start quite early. You know, at the age 3, my brother actually found me on the floor in the laundry. We were having a party at the house, and I'd stole a boiled lolly, being the naughty 3-year-old, and wandered up into the house because we had a split level house, and all the party was in the backyard. So I'd snuck up into the house and decided to eat this lolly, and sitting on the bed. And look, I'll be all honest, I don't have a real clear memory of this event. A lot of this information I got through regression. And up until, you know, this all started to come out for me, this was just a story that my family told me. So it was something that I'd heard my family speaking of, yeah, in a way that seemed quite trivialized, really. And it wasn't until I got older and thought about what they were saying, it was like, oh my God, that's really quite insane. But my brother had found me blue and non-responsive on the floor in the laundry. I had snuck into the bedroom to eat the lolly, started choking on it there, and ran to get help and had not made it. And I don't know how long I was on the floor for, but my brother found me and literally picked me up by my feet and, you know, jiggled me until the lolly came out and I came back. And so I said that story actually didn't seem relevant in my life at all, as I really didn't have any memory of it, as it happened at such a young age, I guess. So it wasn't until exploring my UFO contact at age 13 that topic came up again for me. It was something I knew about, had happened. I knew the story. Well, I knew not the details. So later on, just went about life, a fairly normal kid. Oh, I say that normal, but again, looking back, I used to challenge teachers with strange questions or responses to their questions that indicated, even my mother used to call me a strange child. So I think that experience of dying at a young age allowed me to see the world in a slightly different way. So I questioned everything, and I questioned the things I was taught. I questioned why my parents did things the way they did repeatedly, even though they didn't seem to work. I was just a questioned everything sort of person. So I got to age 13 and we were on a family holiday in Foster, New South Wales, actually. This was a place where my family regularly took Christmas holidays every year. And one year, I think it was 1984, I was 13 years old, and I awoke we were having a late night watching movies, and we wandered up after the toilet block after the movie had finished, which was near the base of a hill at Foster Caravan Park, which looked down over the main beach. Now, we, I'm not sure what's going on, sorry, thank you, I can't see. So we went to the top of the hill. We were standing there, it was in seconds, and that we realized that the thing that was floating above the water down above the beach wasn't a boat. Yeah, so we're looking from the top of the hill at the caravan park down over the main beach, and down over the water was a trapezoid shaped red pulsing craft. Now, I refer to it as, first we all sort of looked at it, and then and it may have even been me, I can't quite remember, said something like, well, that's not a boat. What is that? That's not a boat. And we realized we'd actually been standing there quite a while staring at this thing down at the beach. And so we were watching. It seemed like we're staying there forever, and we'd glance away and look back at it. And it wasn't until you looked away and looked back that you could see that this craft was ever so slowly rising. Now, this thing was probably about 7 or 8 meters across. It was actually a round cylindrical shape. So, but side on, it had this sort of shape to it. And it seemed to be spinning, and there was this dull, slow pulse to it. So eventually this craft got to eye level, and we were sort of hit back into reality to some degree. And one of the girls decided to take off down the hill and go get other people to see this thing. And there was 2 other girls with me. Sorry, I didn't say that. 2 other girls. They were age 16, both of those, and I was 13. So they ran off down the hill to get some elders, some adults, to see, explain to us what was going on. And I have to say again, this is a very strange phenomenon for me, because at this point, I actually have 2 memories of this event. I have the memory of standing on the hill watching people run down the hill. And I also have a vague memory of being the person that runs down the hill. And in my diary, which is the only diary I kept, I must have got it for Christmas that year and decided I was going to write the summer holidays in it. And in that, I say I run down the hill, but I have a very distinct memory of being on the hill and watching the others run down the hill. So I don't really know how to reconcile that. That's some sort of, somebody's thrown the word bilocation around. I don't know. It's just quite discombobulating for me, so I'm not quite sure how to reconcile it. And then we were watching the craft still just rising slowly, and it got to the bottom of the clouds, just as, again, this is a strange memory. I was there, but I arrived, and we caught the craft as it just shot off through the bottom of the clouds and was gone. Now, that evening, I went to bed after that. That was around 12 o'clock. That all went down literally at midnight. The movie finished. So it was after midnight. And then we just, talked about it all the way back to our tents and caravans and things. We went back to bed. I shared a bed, a tent with my parents and my friend. And we had these little hanging beds that we were, hanging bedrooms we were in. So I just got into bed and fell asleep. And then later that evening, I was awoke by a strange noise. I can only, and have only ever really referred to it at the time as a sick or angry dog. It seemed to be growling and grumbling. It just didn't sound like a dog, but I didn't have any other thing to refer to it as. So it was an angry, sick dog in my head. But I could see the shadow of a little, I thought it was a child, a small person walking past the tent. Through their shadow was cast on the tent that I was sleeping in, that I could see. And I became aware of a pain in my left leg. and I could sense something on my leg. There was pain there, and I could feel moisture, and I tasted it, and I was like, yep, that's blood. So I was, at this time, I sort of recognized it was there, but fell asleep and woke the next day. The next day was a bit vague. I don't really remember when I recalled the mark on my leg, but the pain that I felt in that leg was a 3-pronged puncture wound that created a triangle that I still have to this day. It's now a 35-year-old scar, and it's still quite obvious. So a very physical reminder of the event, and literally, you know, every time I sit down, it's there, it's unavoidable, it's a constant reminder. So it's not been something I can say I've been easy to forget about it, because this literally is like a reminder to me every day. Now I didn't, it wasn't until I heard that time where I heard the angry, sick dog noise, that I remembered in that moment having heard that same noise the night before, not seeing anything else, but the night before clearly remembering in that moment that I'd heard that sound the night before. So yeah, I am just assuming that noise and the image and the event is all connected. But yeah, so it was, something had happened the night previous as well, but I don't know. I have no memory of that. So now I have to say, the other 2 girls who witnessed this event with me, I have not had a conversation with around this topic at all. One of the girls I pretty much never saw again. Their family did not come back to that holiday camp again with us. There was a big circle of friends and family that all used to do this every year, and they stopped coming. The other girl, who, you know, is a long-term family friend, I many times would approach her to try and have conversations around it, and it totally, she would shut me down straight up, to actually admitting, being halfway through she was a hairdresser to my family, and halfway through my mother's, I can't remember, I want to say perm, but that might be a bit too dramatic. It might have just been a haircut, but it was a pretty dramatic exit. She was halfway through a haircut or a perm or something, and I approached her to talk about it, and she just left with my mother's hair half done. So she was just not going there ever with me. I have, in the last 6 years, contacted her again about the subject, sent her a really long email and message, and have not got a response to either of those. She is on my Facebook friend list, and she does see my posts, so she knows she can come to me if she's ever ready to talk about it, but that's not been the case so far, and I don't really foresee that happening. So it frustrates me to no end, because I'd really like to know their experiences in that, because yeah, I don't think it was the same as mine. So what happened there? So many years later, I did see occasional sightings. When I say occasional, I was age 18, had another experience. I was at art school and at a party in Newcastle on a rooftop, and there was literally a flash, and many people saw it. And it was just like almost like a lightning bolt shape across the sky, just a really quick, fast light, ball of light, really high up. And then this, again, my experience, I've spoken of to any and everyone who would hear me and listen to me. I spoke of that incident as a 13-year-old. So when a group of my girlfriends at age 22 agreed to come to Foster with me to come and explore the area where I had my experience and share that with them, I, took them along. And we were sitting literally on the sand dunes overlooking the rocks near where the craft had been. We'd seen the craft, and we were watching a satellite. It was clearly a satellite moving across the sky when another light, I would say brighter than Venus in the sky, came flying up like really quickly behind that satellite, and then slowed down to match the pace of the satellite and followed it across the sky, and then did a right angle turn and then sort of snaked its way down to the horizon, disappeared. And the girls that I was with, there was 3 of the other girls there, they lost their mind and they were like, oh my God, that's so cool. So I really felt like finally I had some people who I could share my story with, and they actually believed me. I guess that was the first experience of having that. Just trying to think when the next ones come. So I have to say, there's a lot of other stuff that happened around the early experiences and in my early life, which I directly relate to my ET contact, and including what I did call, I'm not sure what I call them now, but I did call them an astral abductions that I used to have, which always started with a very physical sensation for me. So I would be, now this, I'm talking about, this started for me when I was about age 16, and it's started off, and I would be watching TV with my family, or doing whatever, you know, whatever I do as a 16-year-old kid, listen to music, watching Countdown, whatever it was, where I would feel this sensation come over me, where suddenly it felt like everything around me was slowly moving away from me. Everything started to move away from me, and my perceptions were really quite skew-if, and I'd have to get up and touch walls just to put everything back in perspective for me, because there was something going on, and that was the only way I could function in my reality, was just to have to put everything into a sort of perspective by touching the walls again. Now, the nights that I would have this happen, I would just automatically say to my family, I've got to go to bed, and I'd wander down. As I'm walking down the hallway, we had quite a long hallway, the walls would literally be doing this to me, and I'd be running it. It became a habit for me to walk down the walls with my hands on the walls, each side of the hallway. I used to get in trouble all the time for putting my hands on the walls, but there was a reason for it. So the nights that would happen, I would have the same dream. So every time that physical sensation would happen, I would have the same recurring dream, in which I go out of the window, go down the side. We lived on the hill, so I went down the side of the hill. Now, the motion going down the side of the hill, and in my dream, I was walking as if on a hot air balloon. So it would be like I would be walking down the side, and I'd lift my feet up and they would sink into the earth. And I'd lift my foot up and it would sink into the earth. So there was this real particular motion that it had a feeling to it. But in the dream, that was because I was sinking into the earth. It was a very smooth, glidey feeling. And then I would get to the bottom of the hill, go past the neighbor's house doing the same thing, and then I would rush upward. Now, that would always be the beginning of the dream. After that, I would find myself on Foster Beach, the same beach that I had this experience on at age 13. And I'd be talking to somebody who was there the year that this occurred. And there's, you know, a number of people, family, friend members, and they would be giving me information. They would be just giving me lots of information. And I knew that when I came back, though, that I wasn't really talking to those people. I just knew that they don't, how would they know this stuff? That was my general idea about that. So I knew there was something strange about that dream. Now, many years on, I was, and I'll get back to explaining this sensation that I would get in this dream. I recognized it again for the very first time when I was sitting at Paracon. I think it was, I want to say 2017 or something, at the Blue Mountains at the beautiful big Carrington Hotel, I think it's called. And it was lunchtime, the lectures had finished for lunch, and people were sitting around in this beautiful big lounge room or this lounge area, and these gorgeous big red velvet lounges and chairs with the big winged backs on them. They were stunning. And the wall to the right of me was a wall of not stained glass, but it was all cut glass, but all different textures. So there was no continuous light. It was all fractured light and all over the place. So yeah. So while I was sitting there having a read of my book that I just bought and having a feed, there was this huge, to the left of me, long red velvet lounge, and I was sitting there reading, and something moving caught my eye. And as I looked, there's this white ball of light, and I thought it was a reflection through the window. So I sort of was doing the double check about where this ball of light was coming through, where it was reflecting off, but there was so much discontinuity going on in this window that this ball of traveling along couldn't be coming through that window. So I watched it for a while, and then I realized, because it's quite slow, I realized it wasn't actually on the lounge. It was not like a light on the lounge. It was about half a foot off the lounge, floating in the air. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is an orb. And I watched it, and it had this motion to it. And as soon as I could see this ball of light moving, it triggered this feeling inside of me that took me straight back to that dream and going down the side of my house. Now, I go later to do some regression work around this. This is now, I'm not sure what year I did the regression work. It was around about 2016, 2015, I think. I, in regression, go and have a look at that particular dream sequence and what's actually going on there. And I say in the regression, the sensation, everything moving away from me, is actually my consciousness beginning the process of being condensed down into a ball of light that fits in the palm of your hand. And it's been taken out, and it's going down past the house, and it's getting to the bottom of the hill, and it's being straight up into a craft. And, you know, in that moment, you have all these questions that you've had for years answered, but of course it just raises a whole new realm of questions that you'd never actually contemplated before. And, you know, what does that all mean? And I think it's clearly, to me, also a possibility as to why I may have experienced that bilocation event as a 13-year-old. I can't understand that. That's, you know, again, just my mind reflecting on maybe there's a connection between this thing that happens. You know, as far as I'm concerned now, orbs are a consciousness, you know, in motion, however you want to talk about it. But I think that bilocation event early on did actually help me to understand what was happening and what was going on in my life at that point. Amongst some of the information I got in those moments where I would be taken out astrally, and these things would happen in waves. So I would get it regularly for many years as anywhere from 16 through to 26 for 10 years. This would happen in waves where I would get it every day for a couple of weeks, and then nothing for months, and then every day for a couple of weeks, and then nothing for 6 months. It was unpredictable, and I had no idea when it was going to happen. But I used to have lots, you know, I was one of those people that used to get lots of the tsunami dreams and all those sort of stuff too. So I don't know if that was them or if that was more yeah, anyway, that's a whole nother conversation, so we won't start that one. So I got to where I met my husband, and literally I think about 3 months before I met my husband, which in of itself is quite bizarre. those events stopped. Now, they had petered off quite a bit towards the end, but they pretty much come to a clear stop about 6 months before I met my husband. And yeah, so that's sort of, you know, when I had in that time, you know, gone to university, and I had a quite a vivid and a conscious spiritual life. I had started studying shamanism and many different forms of shamanism, including Wicca and witchcraft, and I got in studying occult and all those things. And then I went into university where I studied comparative religion, and I just, yeah, so much information. I loved it. And that was when, after that was when I met my husband. And I have to say there was not much activity on the ET side. After that, I was doing lots of group ceremony or ritual stuff. I was working with groups at university. So it was really exciting time for me. So I was also teaching myself about permaculture, and my spiritual life is still an earth-based connection to Gaia. My full belief is we come here to be with Gaia, and I think we lose sight of that, which is what happens when you get here. You forget all that. But I think when you become aware that you are this bigger energy, and that bigger energy chose to be here, it really just anchored me back into my my spiritual life, and yeah, living in communion. I like to call it communion with Gaia as much as possible. So I studied self-sufficiency a bit, and I was the 18-year-old prepper. You know, I was collecting seeds at 18 because the world was going to end at one stage. You know, I did that. I was collecting, you know, hand meters because there's not going to be electricity. So I did all that stuff and fell into the fear around that quite early on, and moved past that. I still think it's important that we have the chance to be able to grow our own food. So I think that's going to be even more important going forward, to be honest. But again, won't go there. It's another conversation. So after we moved to Adelaide in 2001 for work, and there I raised my child, and then we moved in these early experiences with the information I was getting. One of the ones that really, and I have forgotten a lot of it, every now and again something will trigger me and I go, oh yeah, I remember that. But one of the very important things they said to me was that I was to be back on the east coast of Australia by 2012, growing my own food and being in communion with Gaia. So that was always what I wanted. That was always my goal. And we arrived in Bellingen in 2011 September. So it was before 2012. You know, I don't think it was around, this number was given to me because of the Mayan calendar stuff, although I was interested in that. I don't think that was their link for that. I don't understand totally, but I think it was about putting roots down and having food growing and stuff like that. So when we arrived in Bellingen, it was 2000, like September 2011, and within a year we were getting what I call the light bulb flashes above the house. They were the first appearance to us here in Bellingen. It was the flashing light bulbs. So they would be quite random to start with. And then we started getting them in threes. So there would be, you know, 3 flashes. And then we went through a stage where it would be 3 big flashes, 3 medium flashes, 3 little flashes. So the 3 thing happened a lot for a while. And then the major one started it really off for me was It was a rainy week, actually. It'd been raining all week. We were stepping outside to have a cigarette, and I walked out to the water tank. My husband had stayed on the veranda, and I sort of turned around and faced back towards the house. And I say it, and I mean it, because when I say it, I sometimes don't actually quite believe what I say myself, but it literally, the clouds appeared to open up. The clouds moved apart, and this turquoise shooting star, the biggest I've ever seen, the greenest turquoise star I've ever seen, went completely horizontal across the top of the house, the whole length of the house, and then phased out and disappeared. And, you know, I lost my mind going, wow, that's awesome. You know, the biggest shooting star I've ever seen. That's so cool, very cool. But, you know, that was quite strange. And then the next day, that was just part of the routine. After dinner, clean up, go outside for a cigarette. Turned around again on the following night, and exactly the same thing happened. So the cloud opened up, and exactly the same shooting star, it looked exactly the same across, exactly the same thing. And I this time lost my mind, of course, as you do. And I'm standing there going, oh my God. And I say something really strange, because in the moment, as soon as I said that, I went, I don't know why I said that. But I said, wow, if another one happens tomorrow night, that'll be 3. And I'll know that's a message for me. And I just thought, oh, that's just weird. Why did I say that? Anyway, so, you know, really excited. There was 2 of them. Wow, that's really, really cool. Really excited. So the next night, you know, it was a little bit like, oh, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? And so this time, my husband doesn't stay on the veranda. He walks out with me and stands beside me, and we turn around, and we're there, you know, no more than 10 seconds. And the sky opens up, and the 3rd turquoise green shooting star flies across the top of the rooftop, or the angle of it. And, you know, the only words my husband could say is, fuck. And yeah, so at that moment, I just realized he probably didn't actually believe the first 2 times I saw it, what I said I'd seen. And then when he saw the 3rd one, it sort of was like, whoo, like a slap in the head with a bat, like, oh, okay. So he was, yeah, he was seeing these things too now. So that was good not to be the only person. So that was our first 3 nights of the same craft in a row. Well, I say craft, shooting star, doubt it. So the same 3 craft in a row. And yeah, of course, that just sort of blows the mind open, and you start thinking about it all again. And of course, I'm then going, oh, I need to get online and see what's going on in the world of UFOs, because literally, as far as the internet goes, I had done the UFO thing really early on, looked at every book I could find, and didn't even think about UFOs and looking at the internet for UFOs until this started again, which seems crazy, but it's true. So it was, you know, there was 20 years of the internet before I went, oh, must look for UFOs. So I was then looking at what was going on, and I was like, oh my God, everyone's talking to each other. This is really cool. So I had to sort of jump in on the community a little bit. And I did a few volunteering at some UFO conferences and things. So it was my way of giving back to the community, I guess, and meeting people and hearing people's stories. So that was very cool. Now, anyway, so the second lot of 3 that happened, because we had 3 lots of 3 big ones over the house, and the second lot of 3 was an orange orb that came. So this orange orb was quite low, and I'm not really good at guesstimating how far away it was, but we have some oak trees which are quite tall, and it was probably twice the size of the oak tree, high. So it was quite low, really. And it flew in from one direction over the house. Again, it was slightly different direction, the skies didn't open up this time, but it looked like it'd come off the top of the Dorrigo Plateau, which is I live underneath. And it was a low-flying orange orb. It was a white orange is how I describe it. So the center had a white tinge to it, and it had orange edges around it. And it flew over the house quite low, and as my son actually came to the door of the house, and I said to him, quick, you've got to see this, and he came out and he watched it as well, and he again moved across the top of the house and just phased out and disappeared in front of us. And yeah, that was the first time he'd seen anything, so he was quite blown away by that. Now the next night it came in from the same direction, but this time it went around the property to the other side of the property and went behind the oak trees on our driveway. Now, as soon as I saw it, again, me talking to the things in the sky, I say, because my husband was in the shed working on the car, I say, quick, let's go to the shed, I want Rod to see. And I run to the shed and drag him out, going, quick, gets back, the orange orb's here, come and have a look. And he wandered out, and I'm pointing at the oak trees going, oh, it's just gone behind the oak trees, it'll be out in a minute. You know, and we couldn't see it, and we waited, and it didn't come out, and I'm like, okay, it's not going to show up, it's gone. And all of a sudden this thing appeared even lower above the shed. It's now not a glowing ball of light, it now looks like a flat disc, and it's totally almost a dull orange. There's no white light in it anymore, it's a dull orange, but it's quite low, and it's a disc now, not a ball of light. And well, that's what it appears like anyway. It doesn't have the same roundness to it at all. And of course I lose my mind. I'm in the backyard going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And Rodney's like, yeah, that's really cool. Cool, thanks for showing me. I'm like, no, you don't understand what just happened. I asked it to come to the shed so you could see it. And it came to the shed and you saw it. And I'm walking around in the backyard, losing my mind, going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It hurt me, oh my God. I don't think it had quite sunk in at that point to my husband what had actually quite happened, but it actually literally left me gobsmacked for quite some time. I was in awe of what had just happened, and in that moment, even talking about it now, I just go, really, did it really happen like that? But yeah, it did. And so the next night I was like, right, I'm changing it up. As I tried, you know, I'm like, that's it, I want a photo, I'm getting the camera out. And so I set the camera up, do, you know, totally different routine. I do things differently. I think I'm in charge now, so I'm setting the camera up and I'm waiting, you know, I'm waiting and I'm waiting, and I'm like, I knew straight away, as soon as it was 10 minutes that I was waiting for, it was like, yeah, this is not going to happen, because you know, last time it all happened within minutes of being outside. So I sort of almost gave up. And as soon as I did the resignation and turned everything off and started to walk away, it popped in. And sorry about that. It's popped in, and yeah, it was on way far away from us. It was over 2 properties over. It was really low. It was like it was hiding in behind trees. So it felt to me very clear that it did not want me to photograph it. So I just went, okay, we won't go there. And that was the third one for that 3. Now the next lot of 3, it was probably a little bit longer in between this next 3 to after that second lot. I can't exactly remember. Now this one was a strange one too, because I'd just gone outside. I think it was winter actually. It was quite cool. It was a beautiful clear night, and I noticed up high a really bright, intensely red orb. Like it, you know, it would just look like a really bright red star moving. And it was, you know, very obvious in the sky. You could not miss it. It was bright red and just a continuing red light moving. And then it started to flash, but the flash that it was giving off was blue-white light. So this red dot suddenly blew out to a big blue-white light. And some of them got to be, you know, some of them were as big as the moon, like they were really big, and then back down to the red ball of light again. And it did that, moving from the west towards the east over the back part of the really high. back part of, the property, or facing the back part of the property. And then it sort of just disappeared. I think it did 3 big flashes, and then it just disappeared, phased out, and was gone. Now, the next night, it appeared where it had disappeared and moved then from south at that point towards the north. I don't understand this. So it moved from south then towards the north, and then flashed 3 times and then disappeared. The following night, it appeared where it had disappeared again the night before, and moved doing the similar thing in the same direction, I think it was actually. And then that was it. That was those 3 nights in a row. So, then I started to think about it, like, did it sit up there for 24 hours and then wait for me to come out and do that again? Or did it just literally phase into the point where it was last time it was here? Or, so all these questions are running around my head. So that was the third of the 3 lots of 3 major ones. So they were just when I say major, they were odd, different craft, stuff I hadn't seen before. Now we still regularly get the bulb flashes, and I've recently got an infrared camera that I've managed to catch a few oddies up with on my camera now. One of them being a low flying orb in behind the oak trees again, and then phased out, and I managed to catch that in sort of bits and pieces that I've put together. And the end bit's good where it phases out. And another one where I had seen a flash and had my camera looking at it, and in the area where the camera where I'd seen the flash with my eyes, not with the camera, but I'd sort of put the camera up to have a look. This red line just went, red ball, I say craft, but just streaked across the screen really quite quickly. It wasn't a shooting star. There was no streaking trail. It was a very quick moving craft of some sort. So I've been able to catch a few things. And that's, they're the majority of the sightings that I've had. I don't know how long I've been talking to you for at the moment, to be honest with you. So I'm, like I said, I'm getting regular sightings over the house. They've been, I can only assume that the whole reason I had to be on the east coast of Australia was because this was supposed to happen. I don't really claim to totally understand any of it, and there's a lot more unpacking of the story that is just quite big. But I just wanted to focus on the actual sightings themselves predominantly tonight. And I have to say, and I do believe that the near-death experience at age 3 is a big factor as to why I'm having these experiences. I think once your mind or your understanding of who you really are gets expanded beyond the human experience, that there's no going back from that. When it happens as a 3-year-old, it changes who that person was ever going to be, and then to have all these other things follow on, it can't help but shape who I became and the things that I value. And I'd
like to go back to the early experience you had, where you said you had you heard the sound of a strange animal, and then you felt down on your leg and there was blood, and the next day you found that there were 3 pricks in the shape of a triangle, which is not unusual from people who've had close encounters. What else was going on around that? Like, what do you think happened there?
Well, I did look at it in regression, and I guess in the end, and I don't know how many people have done regression or had regression work. My regression, I think I had high expectations to start with. So I had this idea that once I had the experience in the regression, the memory, that I would have full recognition or what's the word? Full recall of that event. And I was quite frustrated to find that that information and the memory that I have wasn't triggered a big memory that's mine. It's just a memory of a regression. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the information I have around this, I'm still again struggling with a little bit. I'd like to believe it to be true because it's a hoot, but I don't know if I can go there fully. So I'll speak to it. So in the regression, I asked about the mark on my leg and what that was about, and I was told that it's to remind you who you are. And I'm like, well, that doesn't tell me anything, really, does it? So what does that mean? And then they said to me at that point, and this is where this comes up, it was, well, you need to go back and remember what happened to you at age 3. And that was the near-death experience. Mm. So when I explored the near-death experience, and this is the stuff that I'm struggling with, and, you know, it's a term that people throw around and they say it lightly, but when, you know, if you want to think about it, it is a bit of a doer on the head. But they essentially were saying that at age 3, in my recollection or my remembering of what happened at age 3, I experience and see the whole thing from not the little person, not the 3-year-old on the bed. I'm standing behind the person, the little 3-year-old on the bed, and I'm saying, I'm waiting for the little one to leave so I can step in. So, you know, and I'm like, and that means what? What does that even mean? So, you know, when you try and have a conversation with people around it, they all throw up the term walk-in. Now, I don't have a memory. I have strange memories, but I don't have a memory. And I've had strange experience that this all does actually is an answer for some of my other experiences. But I'm not so sure how comfortable I am, even though I know that consciousness is consciousness, and I know that we can come and go from these bodies. I've experienced that, and I have to say that in part of the regression, I've experienced myself in the body of the being that supposedly walked into this 3-year-old. So I have experienced something that made me go, okay, I know that this is doable, but do I believe that's what happened to me? Yeah, at the same time, you know, it's like I've just gone, it's like a paradox, it really is. I don't know. There's a part of me that also, I guess, says that our minds can be messed with, right? By our own memories, by people who are leading us in regressions, and I'm not saying that's what happened, not at all. Or, you know, if there are unseen forces on this planet that are influencing us from the unseen world, maybe they're putting these ideas on my head, you know. So I question everything, I guess, ultimately I'm saying. So I have not committed totally to the belief that I am a walk-in, though it does answer a lot of my questions. Now, the being that this walk-in is supposed to be, you know, she's, and again, it's probably the analytical, critical person in me that goes, you know, well, maybe it's just a deep psychological issue, because really you're a blonde Pleiadian, you know, like. So of course, being that sort of person, I do go into my head and think, well, you know, is this just a psychosis because, you know, you were picked on as a fat kid, or, you know, so I've gone down all these avenues in my head, and I've not still reconciled any of that. So I do speak to it because I think that this is part of the struggle with these experiences. There are no references to what people, all I can tell you are my experiences, and people give me their ideas on things, and you read stuff to try and get a bigger understanding. But in the end, it just all becomes quite confusing. So you either have to trust your own experience or not. I guess in the end, that's all you have for truth, is your own experience. And yeah.
That's very true. Why do you think those friends who are involved in your experience as a 13-year-old won't talk about it with you? Do you think something sinister happened to them, or would it just be fear?
Well, definitely fear plays a big role in it. It's fear of the unknown and fear of being ridiculed. You know, they probably saw me a little bit being open about it, and the flack I copped probably didn't help. So I think I will say the girl that's on my friends list. I didn't see her for many years, and then when I did meet her and her family years later, they stopped me in my track because she has 3 sons. The middle one is a really tall, dark-haired, very tall. You know, he's 6'4" or something, and then the brothers either side of him, had you not known differently, you would have swore they were identical twins. Little blonde hair, blue-eyed, surfy grommets, and the really nice kids, really good blokes. But in any other place and time, if I didn't know them, I would have gone, they're twins. So the fact that they are split apart always makes my head go, ooh. But you know, I have no understanding of their story, because they just don't. And it'd have to be fear. There is really, whether it's fear of really remembering or fear of going there or fear of being ridiculed, I don't know. They just won't talk.
Just when you're talking about consciousness compressing into a ball, it reminds me of the story with Betty Andreasson in Ray Fowler's book, The Watchers, the first one that is. And she described being inside a craft where these beings were laying down, like there was a circle and there were sort of beds beds like a seat at a 45-degree angle going backwards in the circle. And there were beings sitting in those chairs, I guess you call them, facing the center. But they rolled up into a ball, and they started like balls of light, and they started bouncing around inside where Betty was. So I think that's really interesting that you've said that, because, and it's not the first time I've heard that too, that these balls of light being consciousness, but actually and I think Susie Hansen talks about it too in her book, The Dual Soul Connection.
She does. She meets the children in that form, doesn't she?
Yes, her son, yes. So that's really curious, yeah.
Well, you know, it did, like I said, it wasn't at the time, it wasn't a memory at all, as it was the experience of it was not in that at all. It wasn't until I actually saw an orb and it was just literally the movement of it just made me feel really strange, and like, oh my God, what's going on? And then I just in that moment knew that movement was what was going on. That was orbs. And then when I did the regression around it, was like, that makes so much sense in so many ways. And then years later, when I was a kid, we were camping, and I was sure I'd seen a wild child digging through the fire, and for many years I was like a wild child. And then as I got older, I come to realize it was actually probably this green gray that was digging through the fire. And you know, at first I thought I just was a dream, until later, the next day at the campfire, one of the adults had asked who it was they saw digging through the fire that night. So I knew I wasn't the only person that saw it. But now when I remember it, I think more clearly it was probably that little being rather than a wild child that I'd had fantasized in my head about as a kid.
When did those experiences happen?
So that one was at Chichester. That was probably around the age of 14, 15. I'm just trying to sort of place it in the timeline somewhere. I reckon I was about the age of 14, 15. Actually, no, I take that back. It was the same year I had my UFO sighting at Foster. It was the Easter after. So 1984, January 1984, I had the Foster sighting, and then it was Easter that year at Chichester Dam. That one happened, sorry.
So could I just clarify, was that conscious memory, dream, or through regression?
Yeah, no, that's a conscious memory. I got up to go to the toilet late at night, and I realized there was something or somebody near the fire, and I sort of froze and just was watching. And then I just went back to bed. I didn't even go to the toilet in the end. And I thought I was the only person that saw it. But the next day, the adult had mentioned it. So I was like, okay, that was real, and it wasn't a dream. So I probably myself didn't know until somebody else confirmed that they saw it. I probably would have just palmed it off as a dream otherwise.
And the other beings that you saw?
That was regression, all of that regression. That's why I struggle with that a little.
Yeah, well, it's sensible. Yeah.
This night I'd come home. I had a friend living out the back in our little studio at the back. So she'd picked me up. My husband was away for work. So you need to have somebody around you. But I was feeling quite sorry for myself and having a bit of a poor me trip. And I was out the front and I noticed there was a flashing light, and I sort of looked at it and I was like, oh, there's a plane. And then I was looking at it going, oh yeah, that's not a plane, because it was really like flash, 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 just really erratic all over the shop, moving in a very slow, peculiar way. And I realized it wasn't the plane, and I literally just put my hands on my hips and I spoke to, you know, if anyone had seen me, I think I was crazy, spoke to it and I said, well, if you think that flashing your lights at me are going to make me feel better tonight, you're wrong. And as soon as that came out of my mouth, it stopped and was gone. I'm like, oh. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was like, oh my, yeah, I'm so sorry. I didn't really mean that. Oh, you know. So, and I didn't have anything for quite a while after that. So, and it seems like, even just saying it to you now, I feel crazy, but that's exactly how it happened. And so they hear, if they're not actually directly hearing what you say, or if they're not reading your mind, which I think they're probably capable of, they can hear you, especially because every time I've had that response, I've actually vocalized. So it's not been like I just thought it. I've had responses to those sort of things, I think, at times, but that's hard to validate. You know, when you speak it and they respond back to you, it's a bit hard to deny for yourself, really. I was driving out to my mother-in-law's place and along a very narrow road, and I was coming up to what is like a crest on the hill, and to the right of that crest was a Telstra truck working on lines, and then there was the road, and he was parked right up close near the road, the tar part, and then there was a bit of verge and then an embankment. So I was looking at the top of driving towards this crest, and I had this voice in my ear just say very quickly, if you just move to the left now on the grass as far as you go, the car coming the other way will hit you. And I didn't even think about it. I just went, all right. And I just moved over. And as I came over the crest, half off the road and half on the verge, this green ute come flying between the two. We all passed, the three, the Telstra truck, the ute, and myself on the top of this crest. Had I not moved over, we'd have been a head on. And even now, when I think about it, it gives me chills, because I literally had to, the guy in the Telstra truck stood up and turned around like, what the hell did just happened? He knew something nearly happened. I got up, pulled up off the road, got out of the car, and I had adrenaline pumping through me. I was like, oh my God. I stood there literally and just shook and shook and shook and literally just shook all this adrenaline out of my body, because I just went into complete shake and I couldn't drive the car. But I knew in that moment that voice, whoever that was, whatever that was, saved my life.
Well, I think we've run out of time, so I'm just going to wind it up. And I just want to say to you, Vanessa, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story. It's always really interesting to hear, for people to be able to hear other people's experiences firsthand without going through a filter of a researcher or etc. So that's really great, and really appreciate you coming forward and telling your story.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity, Cheryl. I find it like, you know, the more we talk, I think the more people listen, really.